What if Estiva and Vahn got together to make a progressive house track remix of Missing by Everything But the Girl? People, it's Gavin here again from Hologram Productions.
Subscribe now, that'd be great.
And in this lesson I want to do something a little bit differently. I want to break down a arrangement which I made recently. I am a big fan of the original track Missing Everything But the Girl, and after seeing Vahn perform live and also seeing Estiva play live, I became really hypnotized by some of their techniques which I really like, and I wanted to combine that punchy, gritty drum patterns of Estiva as well as his rolling bass lines with some of the dark, atmospheric Reese pad details that Vahn uses in order to make a progressive house banger. I'm essentially going to break down this template about how each of the sounds were made, but as I'm not going to cover every single detail in this video, if you want access to the template, the link is in the description, which will take you to my website where you can purchase the MIDI pack, where you will get exactly what you're about to see right now, so you can break it down and you can even exchange your own ideas into it to make your own track. And if you really like the track, then you should also follow the other link in the description, which will lead you to my Bandcamp, where you can purchase the track and try playing it out. I've played it out a few times already, and it is an absolute screaming banger. So let's take time to break down the elements. I'm obviously going to start with the drums. First, the kick, which has got 2 layers. The first layer is a kick from a Bound to Divide pack. And then I decided to add, this is called the John Hopkins kickback. This is what I usually do to add grit to drums with a drum bus and G-clip. But I wanted to add a top layer to that. So the top layer is constructed of 2 things. One, again, adding the John Hopkins kickmaker to just a tiny transient, which gives it that real beefiness. And then another layer underneath that, which is a kick which I stole straight from Walking with Giants by Vahn, which is literally just the top end. All together, beefy kick. The tops sound like this. Here are the 16ths, which is using a knife sharpening sound effect with some LFO. This hi-hat sample, which I'm pretty sure I got from Bound to Divide again, boosting the highs. Then Shaker Pete, classic Ableton template, on the offbeat. Then another offbeat hit, again coming from a knife sharpening sound effect. This is more of a me technique. Then a ride sample. All together. The snare has 3 layers. It's a basic waves clap, which is a really short, dark clap, where I boosted the highs. Then another layer which has a lot of reverb on it, a bit of an attack. And then it's just another basic waves loop, which I put in to thicken, and then I made sure I had to rebalance it, and then put some reverb and G-clip, and then all together. So you get that grit and you get that real clear punch. Add to that a few top layers, again another basic waves loop. But I go in and I play around with the volume. This just gives it some interesting offbeat detail. Another top loop, which again I think comes from Bound to Divide. And then one more, again running it through my deep melodic granulation pack. And I had to run it through, a lot of compressors and EQ in order to tighten things up. So therefore, the drums sound like this. So they have real punch and real authority. Now let's look at the bass. The bass is made of 2 layers. I love rolling bass lines, but I also love Reese basses. and I decide that I wanted both and at the same time. But if you're going to have a respace, it's very important that you cut off the absolute subs, because you need to maintain the subs for the main bass. So I've shown you how I make a respace about 1,000,000 times on my videos, so there's no secret, just watch them back. And also the way that the notes glide into each other. That side chain to the kick. And I like to compose a melody that goes up and down. And this is the bass stab. If you take a look at the pattern here, I didn't put in MIDI for any of the kick points. And there are moments whenever I remove the gap. There are moments whenever I transpose it up. And every now and then I put in some 32s. Because that adds a lot of excitement and jitteriness to the dance floor. In concert with the respace, which is the Knox Vahn side of things, it has real grit and real authority. And both of them together sound like this. Now let's move on to the pads. There are two pads to look at. Again, using Wavetable, it's just a sawtooth with a lot of shimmer and a lot of reverb on it, using Vahn Supermassive. And the melody ascends and descends, which I think is very, very atmospheric. I'm going to show you one of my main Knox Vahn influences, which happens when this green section comes in, which is the low respace, which glides up and down. Check this out. This is probably my favorite part of the track. It's a sawtooth with a drive and noise unison being run through a very, very splashy reverb. I had to boost the mids because I just wanted it to give it more presence. And it's got glide on it. So you get those moments which happen throughout the track, including here's another one where it goes down. Very, very Knox Vahn, this technique. And it just, right from the very beginning of the track, you know the track means business. Focusing on the lead now. So, so again, there's a static note at the bottom which defines the key, which is A minor, and then it moves up and down. You want there to be movement. And there are moments when you open the filter so that it gets more and more exciting. Depending on whether or not you need more noise. Oh, by the way, one thing I didn't actually mention is that a lot of my sounds are running into a auto-pan chop, which gives it that 16th stutter. It's quite difficult. You need to work on the offset for that. And I also have a re-recording of this sound, in which I re-recorded and ran it through a lot of echo and reverb, which adds even more atmosphere. So therefore you have the pluck and the lead, so together they sound like this. And again with the bass. And for the breaking build, the final drop, there's another lead that comes in just to complement. Again, very trancey, with shimmer, sawtooth, and a lot of reverb. So it sounds it does have that sort of tribute to the 90s trance style. With a bit of atmosphere. which sounds very emotive. As for the vocals themselves, the thing that took the most time was actually going into the sample and stretching the audio so therefore it fits in perfectly with the rhythm. Perfectly. It actually took a while to sort of stretch things, and I had to put it through an awful lot of plugins, a bit of delay, a bit of reverb, a little bit of ensemble, because it sounded a bit dry on its own.
I step off the train, I'm past your door, but you don't live there.
This just brings the vocal into the atmosphere of the track, and then just adds the depth that's necessary, that sort of sense of nostalgia, looking back at something that's already happened. Those things are very, very important to bring the emotion out of the vocals. And then here, there's a section in the breakdown where I repeat my favourite part of the song, which is "I Can Almost Hear You Shout." I'm actually going to show you what this sounds like in context, because this is the biggest part of the track. Woof. Yeah, that bit is going to that bit kills on the dance floor every time people start screaming, because there's a sense of things rising from the depth, rising upwards. It's absolutely killer. Some effects which I think are worthy to look at. Here's pre-drop effects where you got a riser here. Don't know where I got that, but I got it. And then a crash. And also just a drum roll just before the end, which again I think I got from Bound to Divide, but then I edited it a bit. So therefore that, in concert with the rest of the track, sounds like this. And there's also like a white noise maker, which I've used in a number of my tracks down here, which adds a more excitement to the final drop, where you open up the noise and then you play around with the auto pan. And then a clap right before the main final drop. Taking a brief look at the arrangement, I like to create anticipation in my tracks right from the very beginning. So therefore, I like to filter off the lows of the kick, but I want the kick itself to sound somewhat exciting, a bit like the kick at the beginning of Via Infinita, where you're just getting the mids of the kick, but it still feels really tight, really, really anxious almost. That's because of using the John Hopkins kickmaker. It just adds a lot of grit to the mids. One other thing I forgot to show you, which is like another atmospheric pad I use in the vocal. I think that this is like an AI a cappella, and I didn't like it, but I decided to keep it because I thought it had atmosphere to it. If I add like autofilter, reverb. What I liked about that is that it was, again, this music is much more effective when it feels like there's things coming from the deep and in the distance, by having sounds which are very heavily reverbed, where you can hear it mostly in the mid frequencies and you slowly start to open them up. It gives a real sense of emotion to the track. So this is how it begins. And then letting a little bit more of the kick coming through after 8 bars. And then the high bass comes in, and you know this track means business. You know it means business. Also, I wanted to distinguish between verse 1 and verse 2 to give us a sense that the track is really, really building. You need to have something in verse 2 that you don't have in verse 1. Here's what verse 1 sounds like. What verse 2 has is it's all the same stuff, except I've added more atmosphere by adding this layer down here. And also there's more hats because I've added a ride loop here, which only starts in verse 2, just to give it a little bit more brightness. So it sounds like this. One other technique which I also wanted to employ, which is a very Vahn technique, is skipping kicks, putting the kicks on the offbeat, which is what I did here. Have a listen. So at those moments, and it happens here again, it's basically you take the kick and you push it onto the offbeat, and it's really sexy. This thing does work very, very well in the club. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick preview of the final mastered track. Like I said, I have the master track here, but I turned it off so that we can listen to the audio and you'll get a sense of what you're in for. Let's go. Yeah, it's biggie, biggie, big. Very, very big. So I am absolutely in love with this. Like I said, the project file is available in the description, and also the finished master track is available on Bandcamp if you want to download it and get it. And also, if you feel that you've learned not enough from this video and you want to get in touch, then I'm going to leave the email that you can contact me on. First of all, there it is on the screen, and second of all, it is indeed in the description. I can help you break down the details of this track more, or we can focus on anything that you want. Contact me and let's get some lessons in. So I hope that you learned a lot from this lesson, so please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, and I shall see you all next time. Bang on.